Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale, and it has been a while. Last week was actually the first week that Shane and I had not done a show since August of 2000. We were both traveling, so we have an excuse, Shane, but it's good to be back with you, and we have a great guest on, the one and only Brian Jeffries, going to join us in the second segment. But there is so much to go over from the last, 10 days that we haven't been on. I'm looking forward to this show.
And it's that time of year, Eric, where by the time we're done recording, by the time we upload this, there's going to be more transfer news and basketball and football and who knows what else. So forgive us for not being up to date on everything that's happened in the last minute, but we will do the absolute best that we can.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. The spring game happened, and that's why we wanted to wait until after the Arizona spring game to see, just in case something was going to go down. And thus far, now we're recording on Monday night, things haven't been too damaging, but as Shane said, you never know. And also, let me point this out. Shane, you have gotten a rap, and I've given it to you as well, for being negative. You just expect the negative. Okay, so you go to Vancouver, and you go to watch the Canucks hockey game. They're up 3-1 in the series. Which game did you see live?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, I'm trying not to think about this. What are you doing?
And then I have to give you a second to rant before we get going on the show.
Okay.
Your favorite NBA team is obviously the Phoenix Suns.
The Suns, of course. Yeah, I barely pay attention anymore, and for good reason. I was not originally a fair weather fan of the pro sports teams in Phoenix. I have become that way for self-preservation purposes, okay? If I continue to emotionally invest in these teams, one of which just left me, by the way. I'm a jilted fan. They're in Salt Lake now.
Yeah.
If I were as emotionally invested in all those teams as I used to be, I'd be a wreck. I would not be any fun to be around. My wife and child would despise me, okay? So it is by self-preservation. And I do follow the Arizona Wildcats. All of their teams I follow more closely than anything because, number one, I'm mostly emotionally invested in them as my alma mater, and number two, for this podcast. So the other stuff I've checked out, I mean, the Canucks losing, look, it was a great experience in Vancouver, so I'm cool with that. It's fine. You cannot drag me down on that, okay? But the pro sports teams, they are. Thank you. They are what they are, and we're not here to talk about any of that. We're here to talk about Arizona Wildcats.
All right, well, let's get into it. We're gonna skip for now Shane's standouts. So we're going to start right with buy or sell.
That's good. I'm a little worked up now.
That's what I wanted to do right now, before the show. All right, this is buy or sell presented by our friends at Ice Shaker. Go to iceshaker.com. Use promo code Wildcat Country, capital W, capital C, and get $5 off your first purchase. And by the way, when you do so, make sure to fill out the post-purchase survey, mention Wildcat Country, and Shane and I will be very happy that you did so. All right, number one in buy or sell, Shane. Now that spring football is over, it is really time to be worried about the transfer portal. Buy or sell?
Well, yeah. So you sent me. So for people who don't know, Eric sends me the itinerary for the show the night before, and then you mentioned guys who could possibly be leaving, and you mentioned Kevin Green, who did.
Well, I added that in there today, fortunately.
Oh yeah, then okay.
Yeah,
I thought you were. I thought I was giving you too much credit. I thought you were being clairvoyant there. Yeah, he's gone. They did add a wide receiver today from Old Dominion, who's a big play guy. They added a defensive lineman, offensive lineman. So they're doing, I mean, it's going to be a mix. My hope is that it'll be a wash. The transfer portal will be for Arizona. That's my hope. They're going to lose some guys. They're going to gain some guys. Certainly they need to replenish certain positions that I know we're going to talk about. I will say that, and you have it on your list, I'm just going to jump to it. The running back position, like you mentioned, it's been tough for Arizona. Jordan Washington decided to transfer. That Krosky Merritt transferred after spending just a couple days at Arizona. Damian Martinez chose Miami over U of A, which is not a surprise.
Money.
It is
money.
No, yeah, I'm sure, but it was awesome. Arizona was in the mix, but we figured that's how it was going to go. So you got Speedy Loop, you got Quali Conley, the transfer from San Jose State. But yeah, all of a sudden, that's a position of need in terms of depth for Arizona. So I do think that's a position of concern. I am confident because I have no reason not to be at this point that Brett Brennan and his staff, with probably a little bit of help from Humberto Lopez, our new best friend, will be able to restock that position before the season begins. But yes, Arizona definitely has some work to do in order to shore up that position and a handful of others. And there's probably going to be a couple, unfortunately, just the world we live in, a couple more positions of need come up in the next couple of weeks.
Here's why I'm concerned about the transfer portal. It's Tetairoa Davis. And this is a guy that put his name in there in January and hasn't pulled it out yet. He was practicing with the team the entire time.
I think he's
So
gone.
you got to wonder what's going on there,
I think he's
right?
gone.
Like
Yeah.
it's just a very strange situation. Now, here's the thing, Tetairoa, I have some advice for you, and it's not going to be very popular advice with Arizona fans. If you get a bag of cash from Texas, you go and you probably, I mean, in the chance to probably compete for a national championship, and you're probably going to go in the first or second round, assuming you have a pretty good year next year. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't fault that. Johnny Nansen is who recruited him. I mean, Bill Norton went there. I don't blame anyone for going to Texas. Okay, just like when Arizona lost guys to USC and LSU last year, I don't fault guys. I would fault them for going to Washington because Washington this year is not in a position to win. They're not in a position to win games.
No. It's simple for me is that if someone wants to go somewhere where they think they'll have a better chance to be a high NFL draft pick or an NFL draft pick, period, then go do it. If you think, the NIL money is one thing, and I understand if you're seeing more money than you ever saw in your life, it's really, really difficult to say no. At my age, it would be tough to say no, and I'm twice these kids' age. So I get it. But I think for a guy like Tacario Davis, who has a very good chance of being a high NFL draft pick, if he goes to Texas or wherever else he might choose, and he thinks, okay, NIL money aside, I have a chance to at least be as high a draft pick, if not better coached, whatever, by going somewhere else, then by all means do it. If he's
get paid more money,
get paid more money on top of it, then I'm not going to say no, traitor, boo.
I'm not either, Shane. But make up your mind.
Yeah,
either you're going to do it or you're not. It's not fair, as far as I'm concerned, in holding up, your team. Now, it's one thing for basketball where guys are testing out the NBA draft and they can come back. I totally understand that. I mean, Caleb Love and KJ Lewis, and we'll talk about them a little bit more later on.
No.
They want to see what's out there. But as far as Davis goes, he's had 3 months to figure this out. Either go or don't go. I hope he stays. I think he's a great player, but make up your mind.
Yeah. And the last thing, to your point, Eric, I will say that as far as we know, he's the only Arizona player who's been in there that long and is still holding out. And so you wonder if maybe there's a little bit of resentment building among his teammates there. Like, what are you doing? Are we going to have you in the fall or not? And so I understand the frustration. It's a whole new world. And I really feel like there's really no like set policy for deciding these things among student athletes. That you hope that they get surrounded by the right people. But I do feel badly for some of his teammates. Like how, him staying or going could be the difference between winning an extra game or two next season in terms of, does someone make a big play late? An late game interception all of a sudden turns into a touchdown for the opposing team. So that it could be that big a swing. So I do feel for his teammates in this situation who have committed to the school.
All right, another reason to panic, Shane, buy or sell. T-Mac's injury in the spring. I mean, obviously it's not a good thing, so there's nothing good that can come out of it. But are you worried that this is maybe a sign of things to come? Even though he's supposed to be healthy for the regular season, just a sign of things to come, that not a good omen.
Here's where I'm at the end of April going into football season. You ever seen the movie Bridge of Spies? Tom Hanks. Okay. No. Long story short, it's during the Cold War. Tom Hanks is a lawyer representing the Soviet spy who was caught in the United States. Several times throughout the movie, it looked like this spy's life might be threatened. And Tom Hanks asked him, "Aren't you worried?" And he says, "Would it help?" That's pretty much where I'm at. It's certainly easy to imagine a worst case scenario where Tetairoa McMillan pulls a Rob Gronkowski and sits out his entire junior season due to injury and then goes pro. Could happen, and who knows at this point, but we just don't know much. We barely know anything about T-Mac's injury, though, except it's foot related. He's not telling. Brent Brennan's not telling. When you see your number one weapon in a boot at spring practice, it's not good. There's 4 months still between now and the beginning of the season. If he's still wearing that boot the week of practice leading up to the season, the opener, then I'll be like, okay, oh shit. But because you don't need me to tell you how big a blow that would be, especially with rapport he has with Noah Fafita. I mean, they could run routes in their sleep. But we're at the end of April. There's no point in holding our breath about this for the next 4 months. I would speculate more if we had more information, but we just don't.
So Jordan Morgan went in the first round of the Green Bay Packers, as I'm a Packer fan. Very happy about that.
I'm sure you were happy about that. And our guy, Jeff Dean, who's a big Niners fan, was very happy about Jacob Cowing going to San Francisco.
And Tanner McLaughlin ended up in a great spot in Cincinnati with Joe Burrow. Could very well end up starting there before the year is out. So Arizona did pretty well as far as those three guys getting selected. Now, is this a sign of things to come going forward? And I'll tell you why I asked this. Yeah. I did see a few mock drafts. Takario Davis was in there first round. Tetairoa McMillan was in there. And so was Jonas Avenea was in there as well. Arizona could, Shane, have 3 first-round picks next year. Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, it's an obvious buy, right?
Well, yeah, for the guys who are going to play for Arizona, or presumably at this point play for Arizona next season, absolutely. And there's a good chance that Arizona's not only, like you said, not only going to have back-to-back first-round picks in back-to-back drafts, but multiple picks next year, which can only be good for the program. And then, like you mentioned, Cowing's going to a good spot. Tanner McLaughlin was rated as high as the 5th best tight end in this draft.
I saw him as second best tight end.
And he was the 10th, I think, overall taken, and the second by Cincinnati. Go figure. But I think he's going to catch. I agree with you. I think he's going to catch at least a couple touchdown passes this season from Joe Burrow. But yeah, it's nice to see the Wildcats players drafted, because that just didn't happen for a lot of years, first round or down the line. But to keep it going, I don't know if you're really going this direction with the question, but I'm going to take it there. It's really up to Brent Brennan and his staff to continue to make that sale in the absence of Jed Fish and his endless NFL connections, that if you come to Arizona, you'll have a better chance of playing in the NFL. Because, while we're proud of Jordan Morgan, especially because he's a Tucson native and he decided to stay home when so many athletes of his caliber didn't, the fact is this new staff didn't coach him. So it'll be up to this staff to rebuild that narrative that playing at Arizona will lead to a better chance of having a career in pro football, which I still think, even with the rise of NIL, is still the number one selling point for most student athletes, or at least it certainly should be. And it's just going to take time. It's going to take time for them to prove themselves.
Yeah, okay, that's a fair take on that. It's exciting to see what that this team has so much talent on it, but none of it was recruited by the current staff.
Yeah,
this is a Jed Fish recruiting cycle. Let's see where we're at in a couple of years if Brent Brennan can bring in a first-round pick. Now, at Arizona, first-round picks don't grow on trees. Trump candidate, Antoine Cason, Jordan Morgan. Am I missing anybody? I don't think so. In the last,
was McAllister a first-round pick?
McAllister was. You're right. So yeah. So you had So McAllister went McAllister and Trump candidate. Yeah. And then you had Cason and then Jordan Morgan.
And I think Eben Britton just missed out. I think he was a second-round pick, and Rob Gronkowski was a second-round pick. So yeah, a couple of close calls, but yeah, not a lot. And so if they could keep that going, I mean, to your point, new coaching staff or not, it's going to turn some heads. Hey, Arizona's producing some NFL talent, and maybe that could at least get that conversation started with the current staff.
You certainly have to hope so. All right, before we move on with buy or sell, I want to remind you that Wildcat Country is presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. Hey, Wildcat fans, do you want to win a brand new car? It's time to play for your chance to drive one away. Harrah's Auction Casino is celebrating its 30th anniversary with a Win Your Wheels giveaway. This is your chance every month to win a new car. Just play your favorite slots at Harrah's Auction Casino, which is located in Maricopa, using your Caesars reward cards on the last Saturday of each month to win your wheels. The more you play, the more entries you'll receive. Harrah's Auction Casino, play for all. Hopefully you were out there this past Saturday and you entered and have a chance to win a brand new car. But if not, all summer, and we'll bring on our buddy Mike Kintner will come on with us sometime this summer and tell us more about it.
And you and I are going to do a live show out there at some point during the football season as well.
We will. We're going to do a live show. We hope that we'll have a few people come watch the games with us, make a few bets at the sports book out there. You cannot bet on your phone, but you can bet at the Harrah's Auction Casino Sportsbook. And that is exactly what I'm going to do. And maybe I'll talk Shane into it as well. All right, bonus question here before we move on to basketball. So ASU got their sanctions for their illegal recruiting under Herm Edwards, blah blah blah. But most fans didn't really care that I read. Didn't really care about the sanctions that they got. They were more excited that their 70-7 win over Arizona in 2020, an abbreviated season, still stands. Is this as pathetic to you as it is to me.
I actually hadn't seen any of that. I did see that some U of A fan tagged me on this tweet that that their win the year after that was going to be vacated, the win over Arizona the following year in Tempe, which is like, so you got to rewrite the book, Shane, because that win doesn't count.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I suspect we probably feel the same way about this. Vacated wins, or I don't really care. I mean, I don't. And so if you're an Arizona fan and you don't want to count it, fine. You want to try to change Wikipedia and cross your fingers they don't change it back, go ahead. But I don't think it matters. I mean, Arizona had some basketball wins vacated under Lute Olson. Do we really give a crap about any of that?
Nope.
No.
I had no idea. Yeah, you don't even think about it. You're right. It's a good point.
No. And the other thing is, if you take away all the players who maybe shouldn't have played in that game, I mean, Arizona, Jedfish's first year, they played with a ton of heart, but just no talent, and I don't think it would have mattered. So, as far as 70-7, if that's what's happening, I mean, if that's what they're excited about, hey, they're trying to find silver linings, and that's fine. Their football program is in rough shape. But no, I don't. As far as vacated wins themselves, you can count them, not count them. I don't really care.
All right, let's talk a little basketball here. Tommy Lloyd's made some moves. See what happens when I don't panic. They have bolstered the front court with the additions of Trey Townsend from Oakland, Toby Awaka from Tennessee, and that just happened this morning, Shane. Yeah. It's a good thing we did not record last night. It's a good first step, but Tommy Lloyd still has a ton of work to do by herself.
Well, I think a lot of that depends on what Caleb Love and KJ Lewis do. Between the transfers and the freshman class and Krivas and possibly Henry Vasar coming back, they look like they're already in pretty good shape in the front court. If Love and Lewis come back, big ifs, but if they do, I don't think he has a lot more to do. Honestly, with Jaden Bradley in the mix, Jamari Phillips possibly being an instant contributor, Joe Sansanin reclassified. Has he officially reclassified to 2024?
So here's the thing. No, he is not. And the rumor is that if Love comes back,
he'll stay.
Sannon may not either. Okay. He's not coming next year, or he may go elsewhere. So that's the one thing if Love comes back. But would you rather have Caleb Love as a senior? Yeah, I probably would. Yeah. I mean, it's probably not a bad thing.
Yeah, but you look at even with that being said, and you have to think about Conrad Martinez. Maybe he'll get some more looks next season. So I think they're certainly don't have as many holes to fill as they did last year, which Tommy Lloyd did well last year. Yeah. Even though I know it took a while and you were in full panic mode. But I think they're in decent shape, all things, especially considering all the starters they lost. I think that it could be a lot worse. So he'll have a lot more to do with both Love and Lewis Lee. But at this point, I think they're in better shape than a lot of top programs are.
Yeah, I like Townsend. I mean, he was Oakland's star player, and Oakland went as far, or what, they got to the second round. I mean, they pulled that big upset over Kentucky and gave NC State everything that they could handle before NC State ended up in the Final Four. Townsend's a really good player. He's just undersized. Then you bring in a guy like Awaka, who's not really an offensive-minded player, more of a banger. I mean, that's what Arizona needs, a defensive-minded guy that down the stretch is going to help you get stops. And that's what Arizona was missing. I mean, you look at the Clemson game, they just couldn't get a stop.
Yeah, if you want to compare Townsend and Awaka straight up to, say, Keyshawn Johnson and Umar Ballo, I think you're sort of trading offense for defense with Awaka, and you're trading defense for offense with Townsend. And that's one way to look at it. Townsend's a better outside shooter. He can stretch the floor. He can also get some rebounds, but he's not going to be as elite a defender inside as Keyshawn Johnson. And Awaka's probably not going to score as much, but you never know with him either. I mean, Tommy Lloyd's done a great job developing the big men, and maybe he'll turn Awaka into more of a scorer as well.
Good point. It's exciting. All right, we're getting there. But Shane, are you a little concerned about KJ Lewis? Declares for the draft. Are you a little worried that he might? I mean, it's a weak draft. And I mean, Caleb Love, I'm not worried. You know what Caleb Love is? I don't see him as an NBA guy that's going in the first round. KJ Lewis has that upside. No, I kind of get more concerned. Buy or sell on that.
I would be, if you're intent on worrying about something, which obviously you are. I understand your question. I would be more concerned about KJ Lewis than I would Caleb Love for the reason you mentioned. I think Lewis is more likely to be drafted. But again, I think it partly comes down to whether he thinks he can make at least as much money returning to Arizona and possibly getting more experience and being more NBA ready after next season versus what he could make as his likely second round pick this season, which is not a guarantee. My guess is neither would be drafted. If either would be, I think it would be Lewis. I don't really know if Love could do anything next season to really improve his stock, but Lewis, I think, could. But with that said, again, I think Lewis leaving is the more likely scenario between the two, even though I'm not brave enough to put odds on either.
Coming up next, the GOAT, Brian Jeffries, here on Wildcat Country, presented by Harrah's Auction Casino.
What's up, Wildcat Country? Chris Gronkowski here, and I'm at the Ice Shaker Warehouse, the proud sponsor of the Wildcat Country podcast. And I got something new and exciting to show you. We're talking about the 4D printed University of Arizona shaker bottles with the Legacy Championships on it. Check it out now at iceshaker.com.
Shane, always glad to have the GOAT of Arizona sports. I mean, that's what he is. The best play-by-play broadcaster in, I believe, Arizona history. We're going to call him that way. Brian Jeffries joining us here once again on Wildcat Country. Brian, great to have you. I want to ask you right off the bat, the bigger surprise, Arizona's baseball success this season or the Wildcats' football success last season? Which has surprised you more?
Well, I would say football, because of where it was at one point and the fact that they were able to get to 10 wins and win a bowl game. I mean, that you never expected that at all. I mean, I think everybody thought there was going to be a building block there and that they would be better than the year before, but not to that extent. You know, baseball's been traditionally such a strong program at Arizona for a long, decades, that it doesn't really come as a shock. I think the fact that we're sitting here going into May and Arizona's in first place, that's a little bit of a surprise. But at the same time, just based on the tradition of the program, you kind of it would be more of a surprise if they were at the opposite end of the standings right now.
Hey, Brian, since you just came back from Seattle to cover that series, the baseball series against Washington, let's go ahead and talk about that. You touched on it already. The team struggled a bit the last couple games, and I think maybe that was coming. They won a lot of close games, had a lot of walk-off wins, and now the pendulum kind of swung the other way. How deep do you think this team could go in postseason play? And do you think the pitching in the later innings is maybe the biggest concern for this team at this point?
Well, I think the later inning pitching has become a concern, at least in the last couple of weeks. It really hadn't been. And the strength of the program this year has been the pitching staff. And when Chip Hale brought in Kevin Vance from Boston College, and nobody really knew much about him except probably inside college baseball folks, he has totally transformed the pitching staff, and the three starters they have been just rock solid all year long. They give them 6 innings every week. They rarely give up more than 3 runs, and so that's been a real key. And the entire staff, they've got a lot more depth in the pitching staff, and really it had been outstanding until the last couple of weekends. And now there's been a few leaks there in terms of teams getting some runs off the bullpen, and so I think they'll look at that. Coaches know a lot better than I do, and if it's just a matter of some guys having an off game here or there, and that's kind of the way I look at it, because of that depth, they can still find some people, and they're always searching for people. I think they added another one this past week that can help them. So when you get into postseason play, pitching is so important. Pitching and defense usually carries you, and so this team offensively is nowhere near at the level last year's was, but they lost their top 5 hitters from a year ago. So you knew that. They've been able to score 7 runs a game, and that usually wins you most games. And they scored 8 against Washington on Sunday, which should have been enough. It wasn't, because, as you just mentioned, Shane, the bullpen gave up some big hits and some big runs in the latter inning. So I think that pitching and defense are the strength of this team right now, and with that, they have a chance to make a pretty deep run. At the same time, I think offensively find some more consistency up and down their lineup. They've got some guys that have been very good. They have a few spots there where I think they need to find some guys that can give them a hit here or there. And what Chip Hale has talked about is that timely hit, guy on base, trying to knock him in, etc. It's situational hitting. That's the one area, at least from my viewpoint, that needs to come around. And if they can solve that, they're going to have all 3 phases, and they've got a chance to be a team that could challenge to get to Omaha.
And certainly their confidence has to be sky high after so many late inning rallies that know they're never really out of a ball game, which I think is huge this time of year as well. Let me transition to football. The spring game just took place, if you can call it a game. It wasn't exactly a game this year. Never really is, to be fair. Your overall thoughts in terms of where this team is at. I mean, we're going to see more movement in the transfer portal, but probably by the time we upload this podcast, there's going to be more movement. But where do you think this team is strongest as of this recording, and where do you think they need to fill some holes?
Yeah, I'm hesitant almost to mention a name because you never know who's going to pop in or out. And like you said, within an hour, somebody could be in the portal or come out of the portal. You never know how it's going to work. And that's just the way of the world right now in college athletics. I haven't seen enough practice to give you an educated opinion. I will go by what I hear from the players when I talk to them in the hallways. And all of them love Brent Brennan. They just love his style and the staff he has brought in. They've taken to what he has asked them to do during spring ball. So there's a real positive energy. And a lot of that, I think, also comes off of last year. When you do what they did last year, I think you're going to feel really good going into the next season. And so I get that impression that they feel very good about where they are. I would say the strengths of this team, I think they've got a pretty good offensive line. Now they lost left tackle as a first-round draft pick. That's not an easy thing to replace in Jordan Morgan, but I think they've got enough bodies there. And Josh Baker coming back at center, it gives them, again, kind of that steadying influence. So I think that's a good spot. Obviously, the quarterback situation with Noah Fafita is tremendous. They need to develop a guy or two behind him because you never know when that might be needed. Tetairoa McMillan, before he got hurt late in spring, he and Noah looked like they picked up right where they left off at the end of last year. And so with McMillan back, then you've got one of the best receivers in the country. And again, they're going to have to develop some guys. They lost Jacob Cowing. That was huge. He's off hopefully now to the NFL. And there's some young guys that have played before, but have not been a major factor. I think they've got to step up. And running back wise, I think they have to identify somebody else as well. Not Jacob Cowing, but they lost a couple of guys out of the running back room. Speedy Luke is back again, but he's not an every down kind of guy. He's a smaller guy. He's got his nickname. He's very fast, but they need to find a couple more bodies in there, I think, in order to shore up the running back room. It looks like Coach Brennan likes the tight end position. Now they've got some returning guys there, and I'll try and throw in a name. I'm trying to think now of because I don't think he's in the portal, and I have to qualify that anytime you talk about anybody. But Tyler Powell was a kid that I thought looked really good last year in practice, and because of the depth, really never had a chance to play much, if at all. And so I think he's got a chance to make an impact there. Defensively, I think the question to me is the defensive line. Who's going to step up there? What kind of depth can they build there? And that's been a question mark here for several years. And they found some guys last year, but they lost some guys from last year. Jacob Manu, Justin Flo at linebacker, I think they're good there. They might be better in the secondary than people think right now. Takario Davis has been in the portal, but he's been practicing. And so I think that's kind of okay. Is he going to come or is he going to go? He must indicate that he's going to stay if he's going to practice every day. But again, I don't know. Traden Stukes is back there again. Gunnar Maldonado. I could go on from there. I think they've got enough bodies there. Tyler Loop is back as their place kicker. So they have some pieces in place. And like every team, they've got to find some people, some replacements. Coach Brennan has gone to the portal. He's brought some guys in. A couple guys from San Jose State transferred in. We'll see how they fit into this system. But I get a positive vibe from them. It's going to be a whole different experience now with the new coaching staff and a new conference and everything. So we'll see how it pans out. But I think everybody's happy. Anytime you lose a coach, you always wonder, okay, what's the future like? They found the right guy for the situation Arizona is in right now. And he has given Jed Fish a lot of credit for his recruiting, bringing high character guys into the program. And so he's adopted those guys now and feels very good about where they are and the relationship they have with the coaching staff.
I want to take a pause. That was a great analysis of the football team, but I want to take a pause about Arizona for a second. Just asking you your thoughts on the state of college football and college athletics in general with the transfer portal and the NIL. as Shane and I have discussed, obviously this is not college football and college sports from 20 years ago, 25 years ago. How do you feel about the direction things are heading right now?
Eric, I'm scared. I really am. NIL it seems like it's controlling things right now. And so the school with the most money is going to get the best players. Unless you have guys, and Arizona's got a couple of guys, Noah Fafita and Tetairoa McMillan, who are offered a lot of money to go elsewhere. And they said, this is where we wanted to be. We like the family atmosphere we're part of. Unfortunately, that's rare these days. It seems like everybody's looking out for the dollars first, and maybe not the good old fashioned, hey, I fit well, I like the coaching staff, I like the school, etc. So I'm concerned that that we're going the wrong direction there, and I don't know if anything can be done to slow that down or change it at all. I think the other part of it is that the transfer portal. We're just going to have to live with that. And I'll take a cue from Tommy Lloyd, who basically said, hey, this is the way of the world. This is the way we're going to operate now. And I think if every coach takes that tact right now, that the transfer portal is the way college athletics is being run for the moment. And if you don't take advantage of it, I think you're going to be left behind. And so the coaches that are willing to go and look for guys and bring them in and find guys that they feel are going to fit, that their program fit their culture, more power to them. So I don't think the transfer, I don't like it personally, but since we have no choice, I think the coaches that have embraced it are going to be fine. Now, I'll give you another thing, Eric, as long as we're talking about, well, like I said, I'm scared because I think the big picture beyond that is a potential super conference. Mm-hmm. And what would happen there? College sports is still got some innocence to it. And I'm a traditionalist. I've been around it a long time. I just hate to see that go away. I hate to see it become another professional sport. I hate for a super conference to leave a bunch of schools behind where, there's two, right, that we know of, Oregon State and Washington State. I feel bad for those schools because they've been part of a Power 5 conference, and now, they're kind of out in the woods right now trying to figure out, what direction they're going to go. And that could be the case if this quote unquote super conference comes into fruition. Who's going to be left behind, and how's that going to affect college football as a whole? I'm concerned about it.
Yeah, I think your concerns are valid. I think a lot of us feel the same way, and you just expressed it very well, obviously. Let me ask you about the Big 12. How do you feel about calling games in some of these cities that are unfamiliar to Arizona fans? Are you looking forward to it, or are you just like, hey, it's another year, we're just going to do what we do, and so be it?
Since I have no control and no say and no choice, let's just go do it. I mean, that's it.
That's
you can't look at it as a negative. You can't. It can't be negative. It has to be a positive. And there are a lot of those Big 12 cities I've never been to before, and so I'm looking forward to it. Let's see what it's all about. Yeah, we're going to have to learn some new things. I think the thing that to me, and this is what my summer is going to be like, is kind of delving into the history of those schools, where I know the history of the Pac-12 and the Pac-10 and all the schools Arizona has played for all these years. I don't know much about the schools in the Big 12 other than their names and if they've been good or not. But I love to delve into their history and know something more about them. And so I'm excited to do that. It's going to be a lot of work over the summer, but I like going to the fall thinking, okay, there's going to be some new rivalries. We don't know what they're going to be, but there's going to be some rivalries. It may take a few years for them to come to the forefront, but hey, it's an exciting part of all of this. As much as I'm concerned about some things, I'm excited about to see, what the Big 12 is all about.
And we do already have one of the best rivalries in the country right here in Arizona. And I'm personally excited to showcase that to a different audience. Regarding Arizona football, Brian, I feel like we're not maybe making a big enough deal about coaching transitions and just how big a shock to the system that can be for student athletes. Like I mentioned last week, I work in corporate America, and if I had a completely different team of managers tomorrow, that'd be huge. It'd be a huge culture shift. And you've been there for a lot of coaching changes over the years. How do you think teams or players generally adapt to these new staffs? And then how do you think Brent Brennan has done and will continue to do in that effort?
Well, I think it's a change for every player. They've been recruited by one staff maybe one coach, be it the head coach or the assistant, whoever might have been the lead recruiter, and all the see them up and leave, and then you're sitting there at the school that you committed to. I know in talking to the players that that's a difficult adjustment. There's no doubt about it. I will say that, again, what I've heard from the players, that Coach Brennan and his new staff now have done everything they can to make the current players feel that they are part of the program, that they want them there, and that they want them to kind of create their own culture now. And it's going to be different. It's going to be different from Jed Fish. But, Coach Brennan is also, as you well know, is a Dick Tomey disciple. And a lot of the things that he's doing, if not the majority of things that he's doing, both on and off the field, I can see Dick Tomey left and right. His stamp is on everything. And if you go back to Dick's, 13 years at Arizona, and they had some really good teams, but the thing that I will never forget as long as I live is the relationships he had with those players and those guys that kept coming back to campus. And I don't know if that happens everywhere, but their love for him was something that I don't see a lot with, I'll give you another comparison, and that is the guys that played for Lute Olson. It's kind of the same way, where there's just something that always bonds them. And there was a great bond amongst the Arizona players that were here during that Tomey era. And Brent Brennan has that same aura about him. And so that gives me a real positive feeling that he has been able to pull these guys in and made them believers in what he and his staff want to do. And as I said earlier, I haven't talked to every player, but the guys that I have, they like what they see. That's why they stay, because there's a number of them that had opportunities that could have gone elsewhere. And they wanted to stay because they like what Brennan has brought to the table. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing from a lot of people who know him and have known him for a long time. So that's good. Let's talk about basketball before we let you go. And I'm sure Eric will ask you about next season. But now that you've had a little time to digest the end of this past season, their NCAA tournament run, you think about the first 3 seasons under Tommy Lloyd. I feel like for a lot of Arizona fans, it feels like more of the same as far as great regular season success, a lot of big regular season wins, conference championship, but still coming up short in the NCAA tournament. How would you evaluate Tommy Lloyd's first 3 seasons in Tucson? And do you have faith that he will eventually be able to get Arizona over the hump and finally get back to that elusive Final Four at some point?
Yeah, well, I would say 3 years, nothing but spectacular. And I look at it a lot different than most people. I don't judge it on how far you get into the NCAA tournament. I'm not saying that you don't want to get there and that there isn't. That's not, it's a big part of your history as a head coach if you can get into the tournament. And I don't know where you gauge it, how far you have to get. Do you have to get to the Final Four? Is that the ultimate? And I know everybody wants to get there. I get it. Okay. But I look at it differently. I look at it as if you are winning conference championships or you're challenging for a conference championship on a yearly basis. If you're in the NCAA tournament every year, you are ultimately successful. And no one should ever complain about not getting to a certain stage. And, I'll go back to Lute Olson and everything he did. He won a national championship. And I remember years later where people would say, oh, well, we only won one. How come he couldn't win another one? But every year there we were headed somewhere for the NCAA tournament. And to me, that's a success right there, because only one team's going to win it all. And does that mean that the other 67, it's a disappointment that, the fans are distraught that, they didn't get the Final Four? Or you could look at it another way. So only 4 out of the 68 make it to the Final Four. Is everybody else disappointed? I don't buy that. I think Tommy Lloyd's put the program in a position where they're going to challenge for a Big 12 title. They're going to be in the NCAA tournament next year. How far they go is gravy to me. And this would have been a great year to be in the Final Four. Since it was in Glendale, the table was set, and you go to Salt Lake City, you win a couple games, you get to go to LA, and you think, okay, could this be it? You couldn't ask for a better road in terms of the travel. But the other team wants to win too. And, Arizona couldn't make a 3-pointer, and that kind of cost them the game. And so it happens. It just happens.
I was going to follow up with something. There's nothing more to say. Brian nailed it right there. I mean, it happens. And that's why the NCAA tournament, in a way, it's kind of fluky because it's a single elimination tournament. You catch somebody on the wrong day, and that's that. Whereas baseball, it's double elimination in the postseason, and the best teams at that point in time usually win. Just my opinion on that. Yeah. All right, Brian, last question for you. The last time we had you on, you gave us a few great stories about Ray Scott. And I had a few people who said, get more. Ask Brian about some more Ray Scott stories. He did a great imitation. Is there anything that comes to mind of more of how he was an inspiration to you, or any stories of you guys being out, like the time you saw Reggie Jackson, I think it was?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, there's just a lot of little things like that. I mean, what he taught me just sitting next to him, I could go on forever. And that helped me in my career. Just not only what he did to critique my work, but me just sitting next to him and being able to listen and watch how he did it. It was amazing going on the road with him. I remember we were checking into a hotel in Corvallis, Oregon one time. Okay. Well, this was probably before cell phones. I know he didn't have a cell phone. And so we're standing in the lobby, and for some reason he had to make a phone call. And so he's at one end of the lobby on a payphone making this phone call. I'm just biding my time, waiting for this phone call to end. It wasn't anything important to me. And so he hangs up and we go over to check in, and the desk clerk just stands there staring at us. And I'm like, and the desk clerk goes, "You're Ray Scott, aren't you?" It just recognized his voice, because of course he had that voice, and from across the lobby, somebody recognized it. And that was the kind of way it was, is that, Ray knew everybody. I got to meet people in the industry that I would have never met because he had those connections. And it was just a brief meeting. Hey, this is Brian so-and-so. And I think one of my favorite conversations was with Leslie Visser, who I can't even remember where we were at, but there was some place, and and there's Ray, and of course Leslie, he knew everyone. And so to me, that was special, even though those relationships lasted 30 seconds, just to meet those people in the industry that I admired, that I'd listened to or watched over the years, and it went on from there. Just meeting different people. I remember meeting Dick Enberg one time, and then invited me to sit with him at an NFL game. So he was calling an NFL game, and I got to sit in the booth behind him. And those are the things as a young broadcaster that you cherish, because you learn so much. You watch how they go about things. And I learned things that day. Just, okay, how does he handle his notes? And now, of course, network TV, you got a bunch of people helping you out. That's a great advantage, but you can't help but pick up pointers. They don't have to tell you anything. Just observing, to me, was really special. So anytime, like I said, for those 2.5 years that I got to travel with Ray, meeting so many people, and I could just go on and name them, and it's mostly people you would know, network TV people that he had known for years. Just those interactions, as brief as they might have been, were very special to me.
That's why I rely on Shane here. He's the one that introduces me to famous people, right, Shane? Come on, you worked in TV.
Well, now that I don't anymore, that's a little trickier.
Fair enough. Brian, great to catch up with you as always. Great insight, and I'm sure we'll talk to you again this summer.
All right, thanks, guys. We'll see you.
Discover more Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino.
Hi, folks. Here are your drinks.
Where having fun means racking up reward credits with the Caesars Rewards loyalty program that can be redeemed for food, free play, hotel stays, and more. Not only here in the city of Maricopa, but also at more than 50 Caesars properties coast to coast. From Harrah's Las Vegas to Caesars Palace in Atlantic City. What are you waiting for? Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino, the official sponsor of Play.
Shane, great to catch up with Brian Jeffries, and he kind of made a few points that I know we both kind of want to touch on. Go for it.
Well, as far as not making the Final Four and whether he doesn't judge the team's success or lack thereof on that, I completely understand, and I think it's a completely valid perspective, because as we talked about, or at least as I've mentioned, I believe the NCAA basketball tournament is the most brutal playoff format in all of sports that I've ever seen. It's just you have one bad game or one bad half and you're done. It erases a fantastic season, and I don't think that's necessarily fair to Arizona and all the success they've had in terms of in season tournament wins, big non-conference victories, road wins, conference championships, conference tournament titles. Certainly, those are all still worth being celebrated. The bottom line, though, is that a goal 1 and 1A in college basketball is national championships and Final Fours. But to Brian's point, I think that Arizona is still a very well-respected national brand, and I would put them probably in that second tier, as we talked about before, behind, I would say, Duke, Kentucky, Kansas, North Carolina, maybe throw UConn in there now, as far as the most the biggest blue bloods that with the most pedigree, whatever word you want to use. And I think that's because of all the success they've had outside the NCAA tournament. Because I think most fans would be floored to learn that Arizona hasn't been there since 2001. They would have said, "Really? Has it been that long? How can a team that good be shut out from the Final Four that long?" So I will concede that point. I do think, though, that you remembered and what they put up the biggest banners for Final Fours and national championships, and Arizona at some point needs to get back to getting those.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I also want to touch on Brian's points about college football and how dangerous the super conference. And I'm sure we'll talk more about it this summer, but would Arizona be included in a super conference?
Yeah.
I don't know. And I think it's a real debate, and we'll bring on, some people that hopefully would know a lot more than we would about that. In terms of basketball, Arizona as a national power, there's no problem.
Yeah.
But as far as football goes, yeah, this is an important season for the Wildcats. You got to do something. Great. They had one season and then their coach left. But if you can repeat it, maybe the perception of Arizona football changes a bit.
Maybe.
Just kind of throwing that out there. Now, one thing or a lot of things that we didn't talk about in the first segment, we just talked about football and men's basketball, but there's so much else going on, Shane. So that's why we moved Shane's standouts to the final segment. I'm sure you have a lot for us here. Go for it.
Well, first we got to start with Brock Besser, who recorded a hat trick. Oh, I'm sorry. We're not talking Canucks anymore. Okay. Arizona Wildcats, focused. See what you did? This is your fault. All right. I got to start with tennis. I got to start with Arizona men's tennis, Eric.
How about that?
It's official. Arizona is now a men's tennis school. Okay.
Yes.
The best team on campus currently is Coach Clancy Shields' squad, which won the Pac-12 regular season title, and they cruised to the Pac-12 tournament championship over the weekend. Postseason brackets were announced earlier today, Monday. Arizona is the number 9 overall seed, which means they will host a regional with Boise State, Pepperdine, and Auburn. Now, Coach Shields, he noted, and former Wildcat country guest, by the way, he noted that the program he took over a few years back was 0-19 in conference play in his first 2 years. And they've very methodically turned things around, made some impressive NCAA tournament runs. They got to the Sweet 16 a couple times the last several years. Now they have a legit chance to win the whole thing, or at least get deeper in the tournament. So congrats to Coach Shields and his program, and best of luck to them going forward. I think we do need to note the coaches that have come in to this university, and Shields and Adia Barnes, and I know we don't like talk about it anymore, but Jed Fish have all done a fantastic job turning around dumpster fire programs, and this is the latest one.
I said it about Adia Barnes the other year. Clancy Shields deserves a lifetime contract from Arizona.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Lock him down. You can't lose him.
No. Switching to baseball, it was a rough end to the weekend with our baseball team blowing a 5-run lead in their rubber match at Washington, and the softball team blowing a 7-run lead at UCLA, which would have gone a long way. Winning those games would have gone a long way to both teams possibly hosting a regional themselves. Baseball team still on an impressive run overall. They did win a lot of close games, a lot of walk-off wins, and they knew eventually things would even out a bit. And it was a couple of one-run losses to Washington, including an extra inning Sunday when they blew an 8-3 lead in the 8th. I do want to mention Andrew Kane, who went 6 for 11 with a double and a home run in that series. He is a freshman infielder from Oro Valley who's hitting .306 this season. So he looks like he has a very bright future, and one of those guys who's had to step up after, like Brian mentioned, they lost their 5 best hitters from last year. And then the softball team, they did take 1 of 3 at number 6 UCLA. Should have been 2, but they got the 1. Want to shout out Allie Skaggs, another former Wildcat country guest. who went 5 of 8 with a triple and a home run in Arizona's last 2 games in that series. And since we didn't have a show last week at our usual time, I do want to mention Kaya Altmaier, who was the Pac-12 Player of the Week after having an incredible series on both offense and defense, including a walk-off home run in Arizona's series sweep of ASU the previous weekend.
All right, so softball is playing on Tuesday night. They're done with Pac-12 regular season play forever, apparently. And now GCU on Tuesday night at home, and then the Pac-12 tournament is next week. So we'll talk more about that going forward. We'll see what happens. But that was a tough one, as you said, on Sunday to blow that lead against UCLA. The baseball team has GCU looking for a little payback on Tuesday night. Then they play Stanford for 3 at home at High Corbett Field. And I believe it is not the last series, but the second to last home series. So make sure that if you are in Tucson to check that out. But tell you, I mean, we didn't expect to really be talking baseball and softball. And once again, it's another surprise, Shane. You never know what's going to happen there. A few other things. Our buddy Scooby Wright has been on the show many times. I think he's the best defensive player at Arizona that I've seen in person in my 20 plus years of going to games. Most impactful college player. And Antoine Cason will be number 2. Announced his retirement. Just kind of your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I guess it wasn't really his choice. After I saw it on Twitter or X, I sent him a text and just said, hey, best wishes in your retirement, and said it wasn't really his choice. It said thank you, wasn't really my choice. I guess his neck is pretty screwed up, and so he's just not able to play anymore, which is really unfortunate. But
because I was gonna say his play is, it's not that his play is no. I mean, he's been great for them for Birmingham.
And I am so thrilled that he had some success in pro football. I know his career in the NFL didn't last long, but then he goes to the Alliance of American Football with the Arizona Hotshots, and then that league folds. Then he goes to the XFL, and then that league folds initially again. And then he goes to the USFL with the Birmingham Stallions and not only wins a championship, makes a couple of huge plays, gets rebranded as the Shark Dog. He's beloved. He'll never have to buy a drink again in Birmingham, Alabama. And he should never have to buy one in Tucson either. And so very happy for him. I know he's going to have success in whatever he decides to do next. I know he talked about a while ago about being possibly being a firefighter. Maybe we'll have to get him connected with our guy, Barrett Baker, who was back at the spring game. We saw some photos there. Get him connected there. I'd love to see him back with the university at some point. I know he still loves the U of A. So wishing Scooby the best at whatever he does. I know he's going to kick a lot of ass at it because that's just what he does.
It would be great to have him on just to talk about his career once again this summer. We always enjoy our chats with him. We haven't had him on in a while, so looking forward to chatting with him soon. But still one of my favorite players that has ever donned an Arizona uniform. And we've been fortunate to have him on as a guest many times. So looking forward to doing so again. And finally, so on Thursday night, there is I guess the Wildcat tailgate stop in the Phoenix area. Both Shane and I will be there. If you are a listener of this podcast and you enjoy it and you happen to see Shane and I, come up, say hi, and let us know that you watch it and listen or listen to us. We would be thrilled and looking forward to that. So we'll see who's there. Brian Jeffries will be there. Yep. Desiree Reed-Francois will be there. Outside of that, I guess we'll find out. But thanks to Brian for coming on with us. Always glad to have our sponsors, Ice Shaker, and of course, Harrah's Auction Casinos. So for Shane Dale, I am Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening. And as always, bear down.